Okay, welcome to the Swing Trading with Cycles channel. We're going to do our update on uranium today. We haven't done an update on uranium in a little bit. Last one, we walked through just price targets. We're going to do that again in light of what's happening. This is December 15th, Thursday. It's right after the Fed meeting, last Fed meeting of 2022. They were pretty hawkish. The market took a little time to digest that, but it does seem like the market is responding in a very bearish fashion. The market's down huge today. I think last I looked, the S&P was down something like 3%. Well, let's see. Futures are down about 2%, right? And NASDAQ is down a lot more than that. I think we're actually trying to rebound off the lows right now. We're like about, what is that? Almost 30 points off the lows for the futures. So let's look at uranium names. Let's think about what the price targets might be. We're going to walk through each of them. We're going to do this really fast. We'll do Fission 3.0 first, because that's the one that's looking most bullish. I think there was some recent positive news, right, which caused this kind of surge. This is your daily chart. This is obviously really sort of lightly traded, you can tell, but this was your low here. And so if we look at what that means in terms of timing, that's a high on day 27, and it's currently day 30, right? So we're moving into a daily cycle low. Now, we've already moved up pretty aggressively. You can imagine, like, you could find yourself down in the 20-cent range, which would be, a decent size move from here, and that would still be relatively healthy. Let's look. Where is the 50 month? Right, so the 50-day moving average is all the way down at 15 cents. And that would just get you like right here, which actually would not be terrible kind of structurally. And so this is one where it's not going to follow the same kind of pattern as everything else, because everything else is in weekly cycle decline, whereas this is actually, like, that's the other important thing here. And when you think about the weekly cycle, so this is your bottom, that's week 2, or week 1, week 2, this is your big week 3 where you have the breakout, right? This big long green candle. So that's week 3. Week 4 is follow through. Week 5 is slight follow through. This is only a slight higher high, and then wham, we do have a swing high on the board, folks. Assuming we don't get back above this low by the close of this week. So that's a little bit concerning. It is possible that we have an early swing, like this is our weekly cycle decline, especially if the broader market is moving into weekly cycle decline, which is what I think is happening. I think your short signal just hit, and especially we're now retracing a little bit. We're actually setting up a potential lower high here on the intraday charts for a short opportunity. And it's about 3 o'clock right now, so another hour for markets to close. So it's interesting that we're trying to rebound into the close. Let's see if it holds that. So, and let's look at the monthly chart really quickly. So you can see that big week is holding up the month. And look at that. We took out all of these down months. And so you certainly wouldn't expect us to take out the low of this month. And this is really just this pullback is going to oscillate in here and at some point kind of break out. So we're going to be looking at this weekly chart. Are we going to be able to recover this swing high here? Okay, let's look through the ETFs first. URNM. So these things are in daily cycle decline, but they're also in weekly cycle decline. Here's the thing about the daily cycle decline piece. I suspect that this is actually a new daily cycle here. So that's really bad because it means we're relatively early in the daily cycle decline, although at the same time, we're late in the weekly cycle decline. All that really means is that this daily cycle low is probably going to also be your weekly cycle low. And so it looks like this cycle topped out on day 1, 2, 3, 4. This is day 5, 6. So maybe you get like a 20-day cycle. Where does that take us? And this is not a prediction. It's a scenario. If we got something like a 20-day cycle, that take us to like around the beginning of January. So you think about that as just a ballpark. So think about like early January, middle of January. Maybe we get our daily cycle low, which is also our weekly cycle low. And if we look at the week, then what week would that put us in, right? Let's extrapolate from there, right? Like that would be, right? So that would be in another 3 weeks, right? Another 3 weeks from here, which would make sense on the weekly chart too, right? Because that's your beginning of your cycle, tops out on week 9, and this is currently week 23. So you could easily have a cycle that runs to week 25, week 26. That becomes your weekly cycle low, which is also your daily cycle low. That's how you kind of think about it. In terms of levels, 54 looks like a bit of a magnet here for this is URNM. Same level that's jumping out to you on the monthly chart. You can see on the lower right hand side here. What about URA? For URA, that equivalent level is about 1782. Same kind of idea here. Same, yeah, right. Like this might be a top of a new week daily cycle. And I mean, whether or not it's a new daily cycle is a little bit neither here nor there. We still do have some wood to chop, especially if again the broader market is going into weekly cycle decline itself. It's going to pull down uranium with it. So that's URA. What about CCJ? So this is one where I have been looking at specific counts, and I suspect it just matches up, like, because generally they move in the similar fashion. So that's this day 7 top. We get this little low here. Right. So very, like, it looks to me like, you know, you made a low here on day 22, and then you started a little rally. This is CCJ, right? 1, 2, little back test, bullish reversal, like, oh, we're doing well. So that's a day 4 high, right? Like that's the way I would kind of think about this, which is a really bad look, right? When a cycle tops out on day 5, that means it has a long time to decline. Just like this one topped out on day 7, for instance. This other one also topped out on day 7. That's kind of the magic number, it looks like. Now, the bull case would be we're going to make a high above this high here and continue the sort of short-term advance. So it's pretty simple. Your levels are pretty simple. The hurdle that you have to climb. And same kind of picture, right, for CCJ. We have our last weekly cycle low somewhere around here. And so you have this kind of like parabola type thing that's seeking out a weekly cycle low. And for CCJ, that level is 18. It looks like a magnet on the monthly charts. And the question will be, is that also our long-term cycle low? The jury's still out on that. I think it's likely that we still have a little bit more to go. And that's because the market itself may not bottom. And again, I think the two of those are going to be really correlated. Let's look at Lightbridge. So Lightbridge, ooh, this one looks ugly. Really bad downtrend. So if things got really ugly for this one, yeah, you could see yourself down another buck, so down into 370 range. And it's the same kind of picture for all of these, right? Like we have this major low here, and in this case, we couldn't even rally like 4 or 5 weeks. Like we kind of topped out on week 2, had this little bit of a double top here. Maybe this is actually a higher high, 544. Actually, it is. So this is a little higher high. I mean, look at that. What a crummy little rally, like this little thing. And now we're already rolling over. Again, early to mid-January low, very likely. And I think at least 370 on something like this. What about UUU, Energy Fuels? Oof. So this one is interesting because we have this low here. That's a higher low than this. So this was more bullish than, like, this was starting a little uptrend on the weekly chart. But all the same, I think the timing would line up, right? Like you get your little low there. That gives you a 26-week cycle, something similar to CCJ. And you look at the monthly chart, right? That 480 level is calling out to us. It's just like a siren song. Like you can see it. Let me zoom in there. Like you can just see this. Like we've made a swing high now by going below the low of November. Like below, what was that level? 631. And now we're kind of free falling. Now we'll see if we get a little bit of a reaction at some of these lows here, right, where price aggregated before. But most likely we're going to find ourselves down at 480, and then it's going to be a question, how does price react down there? Do we have to see a test of like the 360 area? And before that, we probably get a little bit of a bounce around, about like maybe 430. Again, these are just areas where price aggregated before. We'll have to see in real time how it reacts when it gets down there. And again, it's the same pattern, and it's not surprising. That's how these sectors go. We made this little low. In this case, this is much more bearish, actually. So UUU is actually starting to outshine in terms of bearishness. So we've already made a lower low below this little swing low after this really feeble rally. So that's important to know about. Okay, so that's UUU, and again, that's significant. It's and all of these are going to do the same thing. I mean, let's just go back to Lightbridge, for instance, right? It hasn't made a low yet, and what was like URA, they're still slightly above. I guess this is like flirting with it already. The CCJ, yeah, so CCJ hasn't. So UUU is kind of giving you a preview of things to come. So that's UUU. What about UROY? This had been doing better than most, and it's actually making new fresh lows. And we had been mapping this out, right? So this actually looks like it never really made a DCL actually. So that could be positive, right? That could mean actually that this one is going to, so that would be day 29 if it hadn't printed a DCL yet. So it could be that this is going to get a bit of a bounce to help to lead everything else out a little bit. But I don't know. I think that's unlikely. More likely that everything else drags it down, right? Like the sort of force of gravity. And more importantly, what does the weekly look like for you, Roy? Yep. This is such a bearish looking candle right here. Man, with this upper wick and just kind of like on pace to close at the lows. Oh, God. I mean, this is telling you it wants to test this area here where price, you can see price aggregated. You can see that wick, those wicks, right, where the buyers kind of stepped in. So call it like the, 210 area. And we're here at 230. Obviously, that's a lot percentage terms for, a small stock. And we've got this consolidation box that we had drawn last time. If this thing spills over, that's a lot of downside. I mean, you see this big move is what's at risk, right? This big move from like $1 basically. So it's kind of staring over the abyss a little bit. That's dangerous. Let's look at Dennison. So Dennison has been consolidating. Let's look at the monthly first. It's been consolidating, and then like narrowing in its range. At some point, it's going to spill out. And when it does, 95 cents is going to be your first kind of area. And then potentially you can fall into no man's land between 95 cents and 63 cents. I think I talked about that previously. Interestingly, it's green on the day, unlike its peers. It's actually made a bullish outside daily candle. So something idiosyncratic here. That's really interesting. So Dennison is trying to kind of outperform, but again, in a sea of really not great stuff. And notice this weekly chart, how ominously it's hovering above the 200-week moving average. It's like, some kind of battle between gravity and something else. At some point, it's going to win, and it's going to fall below it. That said, the 200-week moving average is moving higher, so it's going to catch up to price to some degree as well. But at this point, you're kind of waiting for that final flush, and for this one, it might be 65 cents, right? What about UEC? Right? Also, just that's a general trend, ominously above the 200-week moving average. For UEC, first date with 291. That's this level here. You can see we had 3 months of price in that area. And then below that, you're talking about the 250-ish level. And then there's another kind of set of pivots right below $2. It all depends on how crazy the capitulation event gets, really. So that's UEC, and again, same pattern, still in weekly cycle decline, and also daily cycle decline. So this daily cycle is going to be your weekly cycle low. Yellow cake, worst case scenario. I mean, 315, I would say, is a neighborhood, right? Wow, man, this thing is just kind of drooping lower, and you can see 340 is coming up pretty quickly. Elevate Uranium, 28 cents. That looks like about where things are going to aggregate most likely. Next Gen, this was outperforming, but now it looks like it has a date with 342. You can see the monthly candle hasn't made a new low yet, whereas most things already did. You would imagine it's going to get dragged down, and then it takes out this monthly candle as well. So it kind of erases this whole move, right? It's the same way all the other moves have gotten snuffed out. Like you see these green candles, they got taken out by this, and then you tried to rally out of that. So this is all still just this whole move, I'll just zoom in, is all still consolidation inside this candle. This candle here, which is, what is that? Your June candle. So if we break down below this 340 level, that's where you really want to watch out. Like, then you're talking about, down below $3 essentially, 270, that kind of neighborhood. So that's where it gets kind of dangerous. That is Next Gen, and what is that? Kazatomprom looks like it could have a date with definitely below 25, right? Like right below this level of pivots. And then it's a question of if we get into like basically the low 20s all the way down to like 22 in that neighborhood, That is your big low from March 2022. And finally, let's look at Paladin. Well, actually, we'll look at Fission Uranium after that as well. So Paladin, 63 cents is your first kind of line in the sand, and then 54 after that. And then finally, Fission wasn't one of the stronger ones. You can see we're consolidating inside the range of November. Big, beautiful green candle. And in this case, you've got a lot of air beneath. Like, you're going to want to stay above, call it 48 cents, right? Otherwise, you're probably in the 35-cent range. So that's the lay of the land there. Market is still trading today. Got about 40 minutes left, so some of these prices may change. But obviously, this was a little bit bigger picture, a sense of where we might be headed for like early to mid-January. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching.